And we'll be sending this recording out to all of you who registered, and also to the people that did register but aren't able to join us. Welcome. I'm Love Coach Scott Katamas. I'm here with my partner, Deborah Giusti.
Welcome.
And it is a very special event. Deborah, how are you feeling?
This is great. You know, we've been, Mark's been with us on Saturday Night Alive for almost a year now, and we've been building up to this type of thing. And Danny has been working on this many lifetimes. So it's really exciting what's happening now. Not just what's actually happening, but the consciousness that's getting transformed in the field, in the masses. And that's really where we can all evolve forward, is raising the awareness and the consciousness. And so having this workshop with you and filling you on with what's going on with the details behind the scene by these two incredible beings is just very, very special. So we're so happy to be with you and present this to you tonight with so much love.
Beautiful. So I'm going to introduce Danny. Deborah will introduce Mark, and then we will kind of disappear into the shadows and let them share. As I bring Danny on, I just want to acknowledge what an extraordinary individual this man is. He has been fighting the good fight for so long, for decades. And it seems like whenever there is a significant case where the little guy is going up against the government or against the corporation, Danny's the one representing people. And he's been doing it a long, long time. Karen Silkwood and Pentagon Papers way back, and Standing Rock, and of course what we're going to be primarily talking about now with Luis Elizondo. So, and one thing I just noticed when we were talking with Danny about it, you know, when we were in the other breakout room, just how chill he is. I mean, it blows me away that somebody who has spent that much time in courtrooms, you know, fighting tough fights, is as loving, as chill as Danny is. So let's all twinkle Danny. We really appreciate you, Danny. Thank you so much. And Deborah, you want to introduce Mark?
Yes, Mark Sims is an amazing being. He is very accomplished, computer scientist, has had many technology businesses that he's created and sold, but he's had a major spiritual awakening. And through that, he's dedicated all his being and his resources to the awakening of the planet, especially in relationship to UFO disclosure and our very healthy, expanded, evolutionary relationship with the higher galactics. And you can tell by his bright blue eyes that he is totally soul connected. And so we appreciate him so much on Saturday Night Alive. We've had many shows that he's sponsored and he's produced and helped us bring this forward. And he's supporting Danny in this, as well as going on his own mission to really make sure this happens. The disclosure happens on a very expanded way and a very good way, as well as the harmonic convergence that he's doing again that we're going to share with you tonight. So thank you, Mark, for who you are, what you do, and your undying dedication to this, you know, amazing rising of consciousness that we're experiencing now. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Deborah and I are going to disappear for a bit, but we're going to start by asking Danny the big question. You just recently returned from Washington, D.C., where you and your client, Luis Elizondo, met with the Inspector General of the Department of Defense. Please tell us, how did that meeting go? What took place?
Well, as you know, that this meeting with the Inspector General of the Defense Department, with Lou and myself, arose because when Lou resigned in protest as the head of the major Pentagon investigation group that was investigating the phenomenon of UFOs, he took with him 3 videos that became quite famous because he had gotten them declassified before he left, officially declassified, and he brought them to Leslie Kean, who's a longtime researcher in the area of UFOs, and talked with her and Ralph Blumenthal of the New York Times, and got them to write a major article that was published by the New York Times, and they released on the internet these videos. And so what happened is right away, certain elements inside the Defense Department started issuing public statements saying they don't know what he's talking about. There's no such thing as any investigation going on in of the UFOs in the Pentagon. UFOs aren't real. You know, it's all swamp gas and, you know, lighthouse lights reflecting off in clouds. They went through the same old routine that they've been doing for decades. And Lou countered with sort of a major media campaign being conducted through the To the Stars Academy. He and Chris Mellon and Jim Simivan and Hal Puthoff and Steve Justice and a bunch of others came out from inside the national security state infrastructure and came together with Tom DeLonge, kind of rock star, who helped finance it. And they put together this group called To the Stars Academy to primarily release these videos and to mount a major counter campaign against the Pentagon, against the Defense Department, you know, broadcasting interviews with pilots and other people in the military and in the government. And so this kind of confrontation developed between this certain element inside the public press office of the Defense Department on the one hand, and Lou Elizondo leading the To the Stars Academy people on the other. And then the people in the press department of the Pentagon, led by this woman who's now been pretty much publicized, Susan Goff, her name was, you know, she kept on insisting about pressing this old line of the fact that UFOs aren't real, there's no such investigation, we don't know who Lou Elizondo is, et cetera. And so Lou contacted me and said that this was really irritating him, and that this attack on him was part of a long protocol that had been adopted inside the Pentagon and inside the Central Intelligence Agency and inside the national security state to try to denigrate and ruin the reputation of and the credibility of anybody who spoke out about this issue, about UFOs, and especially the assertion that these appeared to be coming from some extraterrestrial source. And so he contacted me knowing that I was the legal counsel for the Disclosure Project way back in 2001, that I had been a lawyer, the attorney for Dr. John Mack at Harvard University back in 1994 and 95, and that I was the legal counsel for the citizens' hearings on the UFO phenomenon that Steve Bassett had produced with others. So he contacted me in that capacity, knowing full well who I was and what my objectives were. And so we had a series of meetings, and he was satisfied that I should represent him. And so we launched a counterattack against the Pentagon and prepared a major complaint against the people inside the Pentagon and the Defense Department, arguing that they were lying. They were lying about Lou. They were lying about the existence of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. They were lying about the UFO phenomenon. They kept on flogging this old dead horse that these were some kind of alien, some kind of non-alien threat. That at most, if they weren't swamp gas or lighthouse lights, they were some mysterious advanced technology that may have been developed by Russia or China. And this whole threat analysis started coming out. And this particularly distressed Lou, saying that, look, to try to shift from there's no such thing as these things to, oh, well, they may be a threat from China or Russia, and so we better gear up a massive Defense Department spending for more weapons against them. He was so upset about this that he said, okay, the time has come now for us to file this complaint, an official complaint with the Department of Defense against the people inside the Defense Department and at the Pentagon who are continuing this kind of lying protocol. And so we filed that complaint on the morning of May 3rd of this year, almost 2 months ago. And immediately later on that day, the Defense Department, the Space Intelligence and Engineering Oversight Division of the Inspector General's Office, a fellow named Randolph Strong, an assistant inspector general, issued a public memorandum asserting that somehow the Defense Department had suddenly decided that they were going to mount this a major evaluation to determine to what degree any Defense Department agency may have taken any steps whatsoever with regard to the UFO issue. And so that there was this announcement of this kind of more general evaluation that they were going to engage in. And then Lou received right away a communication from the whistleblower retaliation subdivision of the Inspector General's office, setting up an interview, a sworn interview with him, kind of putting pressure on him that he had to swear under oath that everything that he was saying was true. So we had that Zoom conference with them. And then he was contacted by another division. You had a third division of the Inspector General's office, this being space, missiles, and nuclear oversight. And they asked to have an interview with him and wanted him to come to Washington. He insisted that I come with him. And then they backed up a little bit. And they said, okay. They said, okay, we'll
This is a visual.
Hello, you know, we'll have your lawyer come with you, but we're gonna have to bring our lawyer. And so they brought the Defense Department lawyer, and then they brought another assistant inspector general, and then they brought a colonel from the United States Air Force, and then finally they brought Randolph Strong himself, who had been the person who issued the memo about the more broad evaluation they were undertaking. So we showed up there on the 15th of June in Washington, D.C., and went into there's the whole new special installation that has been built just recently right near the Pentagon, which is a Department of Defense office building with an entirely separate integrated set of computers that are not hooked into the other computers at the Pentagon, because 60% of the occupants of this building are the Inspector General's office, who are the ones like the internal affairs investigators to be looking for wrongdoing as a rule if anybody in the Defense Department. Now, in the memo that they issued on May 3rd, Randolph Strong went out of his way to point out that, look, we're not investigating here any potential violations of any law or any rule or any protocol. All we're trying to do originally in this initial evaluation is just to try to assist the Defense Department in having a more efficient and effective protocol for dealing with this issue of the unidentified aerial phenomenon. And so when we showed up for the meeting at the Mack Center, right next door to the Pentagon, they were all there. All the different subdivisions of the Inspector General's office were all arrayed. And so we met with them. And our objective in the meeting was to answer any questions they had, because our objective was to try to inspire these people to actually undertake a legitimate, bona fide investigation to try to determine, what anybody in the Defense Department had ever done with regard to the UFO phenomenon, what kind of lies they might have been telling, what type of deception were they engaged in? Were they engaged in trying to destroy the credibility and reputation of hundreds and hundreds of innocent civilians and people inside the military? So we sort of poured it to them in the meeting to try to get them to expand the scope of their investigation. And Randolph Strong actually put in his memo that they were very open to amending and supplementing the scope of their evaluation as the evaluation proceeded, and that they would be willing to identify other locations that they were going to evaluate. And so that was an extraordinarily important and potentially productive meeting that we had with them for some 4 hours. The individual people that were involved while at first a little bit standoffish and kind of self-conscious about this, because Lou had insisted upon bringing his lawyer. They were they were trying to go out of their way to point out that this was not an adversarial meeting, that it was a collegial meeting of trying to work together on this. We embraced that idea for us to be able to be actively involved in helping to steer the investigation, give leads to them about things that they should look at, et cetera, because we had both at the table not only Lou, who had been the chief of security for the ATIP program, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, but he had also been the executive director of it for 8 years. And they had there at the table the legal counsel for the Disclosure Project and Dr. Mack's lawyer, so that we had arrayed at this table a group of people who, if in fact we could come to some kind of a sense of common mission here, could come to grips with this. And I went to some length to try to point out that, look, this is all being undertaken in the context of the upcoming June 25th filing of this report that has been mandated now by the Congress. They filed a supplement to the 2021 Intelligence Community Appropriations Act, mandating that the Defense Department, the Office of Naval Intelligence, and the UAP Task Force file with them by June 25th a report to the United States Senate Intelligence Committee, giving them a briefing on what the Defense Department was doing with regard to this phenomenon. So our meeting on the 15th of June proceeded only by 10 days. The scheduled report coming in. Here we are on the 22nd now, just 3 days before this report is supposed to be coming in. So what I want to do is I want to, in the first portion of this, talk about what it is that we would hope to have done through these types of investigations. And then secondly, we'll address the issue of what might be anticipated with the upcoming report that everybody's writing about and talking about. And then thirdly, we'll talk about the felt need that we still have to basically go over the head of these people and go directly to the people of the world to promulgate this major citizens initiative to establish direct citizen-to-citizen diplomatic relationship with the extraterrestrial beings who are the pilots and the occupants of these UFOs. So that's sort of what we're proposing doing here this evening to touch upon these things. And so I'll just close off this first portion of this saying that, look, the scope of, it's important to understand that the Defense Department at this point in time has issued an official statement that the 3 videos that were released by Lou Elizondo upon his resigning from the executive directorship of the project in the Pentagon, these 3 videos are real. They're authentic. They're actual F-18 Hornet video gunship photos in video from of these phenomenon. And these are real, these videos. Now, that was somehow misinterpreted by a lot of the media, and they came out with headlines saying, US Pentagon declares UFOs to be real. That wasn't exactly what they said. What they said in their releases was that the videos were real. But the interesting fact is that in response to the major media response to the release of these videos, stating that the Defense Department had said that the UFOs were real, the Defense Department did not issue any corrective to that. They did not issue any corrective saying, no, we didn't say the UFOs are real. We said the videos were real. But the momentum built all through the media that the Pentagon was saying that the UFOs are real. And they let that stand. And so that we can anticipate in the report that's going to be coming in 3 days from now, that the Defense Department is going to be compelled to have to acknowledge that the UFOs are real. Now, so that's an extremely important position that we think they're getting set to take officially. This will be a slight amendment of their original statements that the videos were real. That we think they're getting ready to state that the UFOs are real. And secondly, what they're going to try to assert is that this interesting quote that they've got going now is that they have been unable to find any definitive proof showing that these are extraterrestrial. Setting aside for the moment whether that's true or not, that isn't really saying anything. You know, and the headlines that were going out in the New York Times and other places were saying this report is going to say that there's no evidence that these are extraterrestrial. That's not what the study is saying. The study isn't saying there's no evidence. What they're saying is they do not believe they have found any definitive evidence to establish that these are extraterrestrial. Now, if in fact the report is interpreted by the media to be asserting that they don't have any evidence at all that these are extraterrestrial, that's going to be a big problem for the Pentagon, because they have ample information and evidence indicating that they're extraterrestrial. And the fact is that Luis Elizondo is going to insist upon pointing out that there's lots of evidence that they're extraterrestrial. So that we have an upcoming drama that is going to follow immediately on the heels of the release of this report, of a potential continuing dialectic dynamic that'll be going on between the report and Luis Elizondo as the director of the investigation by the Pentagon. So that's sort of in the offing right now, but extraordinarily importantly, Luis Elizondo has responded to the reports of the report. The New York Times on Thursday, June 3rd, issued an article in which they said they have been in contact with a very high-level administration official who has access to the classified portion of the report. They call it the classified annex. And he's asserting that in the annex, the Defense Department report is going to say that they're still unclear about whether or not these might be some new super advanced technology that's been developed by China or Russia. Now, that is totally false. That's totally false. And Luis Elizondo has said so now. He has said so to the Associated Press in a June 4th lengthy interview that he and I participated in. He has stated to them that the chances of these UFOs being any type of advanced technology developed by Russia or China is so absolutely infinitesimal that it disappears into nothingness. He said, because look, he said, if the China or Russia had an advanced technology of this kind, and we in the Western powers didn't have knowledge about that through our intelligence sources, it would be the most colossal intelligence failure in the history of the human family, he said. And so, and secondly, he said, very importantly, he said, we in the government have detailed reports of this technology being active as early as 1947. He said, and that to think that China or Russia in 1947 could have had this technology when China, they were still driving around in ox carts with stone wheels, he said. And Russia had just gotten out of World War II, in which they'd lost 20 million people, and they were tearing up the rail lines that went from Russia into Europe so they could have metal to use in their country. And to try to think that somehow Russia or China had developed this technology, which was operational, back in 1947 and 1950s, is preposterous. So Luis Elizondo, as the head of the Pentagon investigation of this phenomenon, has basically scotched entirely any type of effort on the part of this report to suggest that, well, maybe it's unclear yet. Maybe these are still have been produced by Russia and China. He has basically buried that line. So we've got the Pentagon coming out saying, well, they're definitely not ours. Now, they do not represent some sort of advanced secret technology that our United States government has developed. They're saying that in the report, whether that's true or not, they're saying it. And Lou is insisting that there's no significant chance of any kind that these are Russian or Chinese. So what that does is it forecloses, at least for the purposes of the discussion that are going to be going on, both of those options. And so Dan Huff, who was one of the AP reporters that was interviewing Lou, said, he was kind of aghast. He said, well, if they're not ours, they're not from China or Russia, where are they from? At which point Lou said, well, we've been looking at the possibility that they're extraterrestrial or even extra dimensional. At which point the AP reporter was just kind of completely confused. And he was saying, wait a second, are you, as the head of the investigation, United States Pentagon, saying that these, you think these are more likely to be extraterrestrial? At which point we pointed out to him that Dr. Eric Davis had actually briefed the Senate Intelligence Committee back in October of last year on this, and said that the vast majority of the people from inside the Defense Department that have been investigating this phenomenon hold the belief that these are off-world vehicles. And so the stage is set right now for this report to come in, and my guess is, or my actual judgment is, that the people are still scrambling inside the Defense Department and the UAP task force inside the Office of Naval Intelligence to amend the actual report to not being stepping in a major hole here, of coming out and getting themselves trapped in some further lie about the UFO phenomenon. So they're trying to not be caught behind the power curve on this, because the power curve is basically being narrated by Lou Elizondo. He, as the commander and the head of the investigation of this for the Pentagon, is not taking any guff from the Defense Department on this. And we're trying to recruit the people from inside the Inspector General's office to join with us, to participate in a bona fide, legitimate, far-ranging investigation of the history of the activities of the Defense Department and the Central Intelligence Agency and the other Federal Bureau of Investigation, other government agencies that have been participating for decades in lying and dissembling and joining together to try to destroy the credibility and reputations of any citizens who are trying to report this to the world. So that's where we're at here on the eve of the release of this report. Now, as of today, I've gotten contacted by a number of media people that are saying that people inside the Pentagon are taking the position with them off the record that they don't even have any obligation to make any portions of this report public. And I guess they can try that if they'd like to, but I don't think any portions of this report are going to remain secret for more than a week after they put it in, no matter what they do. So, because there's just too many media people around, and they've got too many good sources, and we're going to make sure that they have even more good sources, to make sure that they don't get away with this any longer. So we have joined issue at this point with the elements inside the Defense Department, the Central Intelligence Agency, the Office of Naval Intelligence, and the FBI and others who are now, there's a whole new generation of leadership in those organizations. So the question that is really posed is whether the kind of bureaucratic momentum of the previous protocols of deception are going to bind this new generation of leadership in the Defense Department, or whether they're going to join with us as citizens and get out ahead of this thing and try to figure out assuming that these phenomena of UFOs are in fact real craft, that they're capable of flying beyond the speed of light, that they're able to travel in our atmosphere at up to 43,000 miles an hour that they've been clocked at, that they can descend from 80,000 feet down to 50 feet above the ocean in less than 1 second and come to a complete stop, which would subject them to some 600 Gs that would tear to shreds any vehicle that we've ever built here on the planet, and that they can then submerge and go under the water and travel at over 200 knots under the water. And that this is all coming out now, and that they're going to have to come to grips with this reality. And what we're trying to do is to get them beyond the argument about whether these are real, whether these come from Russia or China, whether these are predominantly some secret technology that our military or corporations have developed that we don't know about. Get them past that argument and get to the issue of just who do you think it is that are piloting these things? What are you going to say about who the occupants of these are if they're extraterrestrial? And what are the implications of this for our human family? This is the profound question that has to be confronted, and the institutions can try to defer and delay coming to grips with that fundamental question for as long as they try to. But the citizens aren't going to do that any longer. Our citizens are going to step forward. We're going to say, look, we believe that there's adequate evidence that these UFOs are not only real, but that in fact they're of an extraterrestrial origin, which is demonstrative of the fact that there's an extraterrestrial civilization that surrounds us here in our galaxy, and that we have to start preparing to become part of this galactic community. And so we're going to have to try to deal with developing an entirely new worldview to supplement our spectrum of human worldviews, that all of which are rooted in the fundamental premise that our species is the only sentient, highly intelligent, highly technologically developed species in the entire universe. I mean, if that's not laughable, but the fact is that's been the position that science has taken, the scientific community, the university community. When I represented Dr. John Mack back in 1994, when he was dragged up in front of this faculty committee for writing a book about this issue, when I confronted Dr. Rawls, who was the chairman of that tribunal, and I said, look, whatever the nature of this tribunal is either one of the two following fact questions going to be at issue in this hearing? Number one, whether extraterrestrial intelligence exists. And number two, whether at least some of these UFOs that have been cited might actually be vehicles from an extraterrestrial civilization. At which point Dr. Rawls said, well, absolutely, both of those questions are at issue in these hearings, and it's totally ridiculous for anybody to believe either one of those is true. And this was Harvard University saying this. And so our community here, the 117 of us that are here tonight, and the many tens of thousands of us that are all around the country, and the many millions of us that are all around the world, have actually had enough of this, and that we're ready to step forward. We're not going to take this anymore, and we're going to give the institutions a chance to respond, but we're not going to be depending upon them to voluntarily disclose this information to us. They can try to dribble out as much or as little of this information as they think they can get away with, or they can get on board this whole movement. But we'll see. So that's where we are tonight, on the eve of the expectation that this report is going to be filed in 3 days on the 25th, and that you're going to see a barrage of major news media about this report when it comes in. And if the Defense Department attempts to keep it secret, they're only going to lose more credibility, because it's going to come out, whatever's in the report. And if the report that comes out doesn't really come to grips with the truth of this matter, the people are going to insist upon another report, and they're going to insist upon the Intelligence Committee in the Senate, and not only that, but the Judiciary Committee, every other committee in the Congress. This can't be left to the intelligence community, or certainly to the Armed Services Committee. It's got to be taken up by our entire Congress. and by both political parties, by all political parties, and most importantly, by the citizens ourselves. You know, we've got to take our lesson from this experience. The last 75 years, the most important secret in the history of our human family is being concealed from us by the institutions. And we have to bring this to an end, and we have to join together in an upward, positive, forward campaign to get at the truth of this and establish meaningful, positive, amicable relations with the extraterrestrial civilization and get past all this fear-mongering and isolationism. So that's where we are tonight on the eve of the coming report that's going to be coming in a few days.
Well, thank you very much, Danny.
That's just my ideas right off the top of my head. Right.
We're going to bring Mark on in a moment, but a couple of key questions that have come in. And just a reminder to everybody, please keep yourselves muted. I can mute people that are in computer, but some people that come in on their cell phone, I can't mute. And so I know that somewhere I've been hearing a lot of kitchen clatter. And so if people could please keep themselves muted, that's really important. We are going to take some of your questions. I'm kind of filtering them, and Deborah Giusti is also filtering them. So that's really, really important. But Danny, a couple of immediate ones. Mm-hmm. Can you address kind of the whole false flag issues and that theory? And also, what's your take on the next generation within the Pentagon versus the old guard and how things are going? And kind of along those lines, what direction do you think the Inspector General is going to take? Do you think that the Inspector General really is going to be aggressive about getting the Pentagon to release prior records, or cave into the pressure to not do so?
Well, let me take the second part of the question first. I believe at this point in time, the individuals inside the Inspector General's office who have been assigned to this task are still trying to figure out whether they are actually authorized to conduct a genuine investigation of this. They don't know yet. They still live under the continuing auspices of 75 years of compelled non-disclosure and secrecy about this, and so that we don't know yet whether they've ever gotten the memo on the fact that this has changed. But importantly, we don't know that there is any such memo yet. We don't know whether it was Luis Elizondo in his release of these 3 videos that have basically broken the dam here, and that the Defense Department is filled with a bunch of little Dutch boys, trying to put their thumb in the dam to try to close it up again. We don't know, but we're perfectly willing at this point to take them initially at their word that they have a genuine interest in analyzing this. But we're going to try to help them understand how they articulate their desire to expand the scope of their evaluation to turn into an investigation, which are different categories right now. An evaluation is basically an attempt to determine the scope of their jurisdiction. That's what's really going on right now. And so we're going to try to get them convinced that their jurisdiction ought to be expanded. And we're trying to get them to believe that their jurisdiction ought to extend beyond an evaluation into an actual investigation. And I'm aware as a lawyer, that there are different standards there. That they have certain standards as to what standards they have to meet to initiate an actual official investigation. And there's, Terry versus Ohio. There's a whole bunch of cases that exist, and so I can help them with the benefit of my counsel on how they can move from one standard to the next to meet those legally identified standards. And so that's what we're going to be doing with them. And so we'll see how bona fide this whole undertaking is going to be on the part of the Inspector General's office. But Lou and I are both willing to start with an assumption that they are going to try to do a good faith analysis of this. Now, people might be a bit surprised at that about me because of all my 50 years of litigating against the national security state and operating on the assumption that they've been duplicitous and deceitful and even criminal, in fact. But I'm willing to grant to a new generation of people inside the Defense Department a potential change of heart and change of mind. And I know that some people will rush to try to ridicule us for that, but I think that that there's a limited amount of time that I'm willing to engage in that assumption. And I dare say the people in the national security state are perfectly aware of the limited amount of time that I'm going to give them to do that. But we'll see. We'll see how that develops. But for the first part of your question, which is sort of a slightly different question, and that is what about the different elements within the community, our community, the UFO community, that are frightened and fearful that this spate of increased UFO sightings and this apparent willingness of the Defense Department to acknowledge that the UFOs are real, et cetera, is just a precursor for a major false flag, fake alien invasion, and that they would utilize this to try to do two things. One of them is to garner vastly more amounts of money to their defense budget to build a whole new generation of major weapons to allegedly protect our planet against an extraterrestrial civilization. Well, on the face of it, that's preposterous for the Defense Department to take a position like that, because when a civilization has craft that can travel beyond the speed of light and can travel at 43,000 miles an hour inside our atmosphere without burning up and go underwater and travel 200 knots underwater, it's not likely that we're going to come up with any great technology that is going to be able to neutralize them. And when the evidence starts building up that this phenomenon has been around since 1947, at least in 1945, and they haven't done anything to us yet, and they've clearly had the capacity to do that up until this point, short of developing any new super weapons of some kind that they might have in mind. And so the demand for that kind of a weapon system isn't real. The need for such a weapon system isn't real. And we will mount an aggressive campaign against that. And people like Carol Rosin inside our community has been engaged in a major campaign to try to stop them from putting space-based weapons in space, ostensibly to protect us against some extraterrestrial forces, et cetera. But there are others who are articulating this concern unto a fear, unto a desire to state a state of emergency about this issue, that this is all a precursor to a major fake invasion to be staged by our military and our defense forces, utilizing back-engineered technology that's been recovered from some of the crash sites, et cetera. My position has been quite clear on that, is that I not only do not believe that that is true, I believe that it's not true. And I've been very clear about this. It's not that it's beyond them to do that. I mean, there are elements inside the military industrial complex that would be perfectly happy to develop such a plan, but they're not going to deploy that plan until they run out of other enemies. They haven't run out of terrorists to deal with in the Middle East. They haven't run out of even Russia as their potential adversary. We're still complaining about them having stopped us from taking over the Ukraine, and closing off their sole warm water port, in Crimea. The whole Republican Democrat coalition has framed that in terms of them being an aggressive invading another country, whereas the United States was actively engaged in recruiting every single one of the republics all along the western borders of the Soviet Union into NATO. I mean, it was anybody who has a political IQ above room temperature will recognize what it is that was going on there. And so they've got Russia still to deal with. They've still got China as the rising Asian empire, which isn't surprising anybody who even reads. This has been underway by China for decades. And in fact, Samuel P. Huntington, at the very end of the Cold War in 1992, wrote a major article for the Council on Foreign Relations in their major magazine, Foreign Affairs, advocating that we all start girding our loins to get into a long-standing confrontation with China, the new rising Asian empire. So, they've got plenty of things on their plate to justify massive military expenditures. So it doesn't make any political sense or military sense or even budget raising sense for them at this point in time to deploy such a false flag operation. Now, the fact of the matter is that some of the people that are promulgating this theory that this is all this spate of UFO sightings and publicity about it and everything is just a precursor for a false flag operation. I think they're operating a little bit out of what we used to call in the Jesuits first fervor. They've come to discover there is such a thing as false flags, and they didn't know that before. I mean, I've known this for like 3 decades, but they didn't even know what Operation Northwoods was. It was planned back in 1960 by the United States military to try to stage a false attack, dressing up Cuban refugees as Cuban military and attacking people in Miami. I mean, this I've known about this for 40 years almost. So I'm very familiar with this entire history of false flags, et cetera. But some people are comparative newcomers to this, and they've discovered that this actually does happen, that there are false flags, and that our United States military have been engaged in promoting and promulgating these. That's all true. But my opinion is that succumbing to false fervor about this issue at this time, directly contrary to the evidence of the political situation in the world right now, that provides all kinds of opportunities to the military to maintain massively high military budgets. In addition to that, they have access to this almost unlimited black budget, that they've had access to for years and years. So it just doesn't compute. It doesn't compute to me. And not only that it doesn't compute to me to cause me to believe it's true, it doesn't compute so much that it's clear to me that it's not true. And so therefore, it's really important that we not get distracted, when we're right at this very moment of coming to grips with the extraterrestrial nature of the UFOs and working at trying to get the institutions of our government to come to grips with this reality in a time that we've been working toward for 75 years, basically since Roswell. So when we're right at this moment, I don't think it's a good idea to try to distract the community by leading them off into some false direction that, what we really need to be worrying about now, now that we're on the brink of getting them to acknowledge that they're extraterrestrial, is get caught in kind of a primitive dialectic with the national security state, which I've been engaged in for decades, as you know. I mean, I've spent more time beating up on the national security state than most people have been alive, even on this broadcast. So I believe that I have a fairly high level of credibility on this particular issue. And so I want to make it clear to everybody what my position is on this. And I'm not faulting different people who may have a different view on this. All I'm saying is that I think that they're being premature about this, to put it clearly. That there may come a point in time in the future when those kind of elements inside the national security state infrastructure would think that it's timely to try to deploy such a plot, but it's not now. And I do not believe, I would use the same quote of Luis Elizondo. I think that the chances of this being actively underway right now is so infinitesimally small that it can be functionally set aside for a future discussion. But the fact that they're so worried about it now and getting out ahead of it to try to to salt the ground, as it were, of such a plan, has some minimal advantage to try to start getting people prepared for such a horrible thing, to conceive of it. I mean, probably 90% of the people in the country don't even know what a false flag operation is. So, to help educate people about this ahead of time, and the worst that you can say is that you may be out ahead of this thing considerably, is a positive way to look at what it is that's being set forth by people in the community, revealing the existence of this particular concept. So that's my position on both of those parts to your question.
Thank you. We are going to bring Mark on in just a moment. Victor just wanted to clarify something, and then one last question for you for now, Danny. Victor just wants to clarify, the report will be given to the Senate committee on June 25th,
yes,
but it's not made public until it's been evaluated by the Senate committee. Is that accurate?
Well, I would assume that's what they're going to do. But what's happened, as I understand it, is the task force itself, in cooperation with the head of the defense, the director of national intelligence, they have already divided the report up into a classified annex and a non-classified portion. And so if there's a portion of it that's not classified, it may well be that the people on the Senate Intelligence Committee will want to have some time to read through it and familiarize their staff with it, and to be able to be in a position to answer some questions about it, et cetera, before they decide to release it. But my guess is that within 24 hours of the people on the Senate committee, the Senate Intelligence Committee, getting their hands on this report, it's going to be in the New York Times, in the Washington Post. And Lou is already scheduled to do 2 more 60-minute interviews.
Oh, wow.
By the way, so I imagine Chris Mellon will be there too, and Chris Mellon is another guy you got to look at. Chris Mellon is a real major participant in this effort to get this information made public, and I know people have, and understandably, have developed a certain sort of attitude about Chris Mellon, because he was the Assistant Secretary of Defense in charge of intelligence, all during a continuing period where lies were being told about this. And he had to know that lies were being told. And he had to have been sort of part of that entire bureaucracy that authorized lying to go on. For example, under the Clinton administration, he was the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence under both Clinton and W. Bush. So people have a residual resentment to Chris because of their assumption that he participated in those type of decisions, and so that's hanging over him. But he knows that. I mean, he's aware of the fact that he's going to have to overcome that. All grown-ups have to live down some of their earlier mistaken judgments in the past, and he may well believe that it was a proper judgment to make at the time, but he has changed his mind about that now. And so what we want to do, as I say, to remain upward, positive, forward in this entire movement, we have to try to bring on board everybody that we can when they're ready to be brought on board, and not continue to beat them up over the fact that they've made bad decisions in the past. Now, that's as far as individuals go. As far as the United States Central Intelligence Agency goes, you shouldn't believe a thing anybody says from the CIA, because the whole institution exists for the purpose of lying and dissembling and mounting covert operations to deceive the American public and to promulgate and foster and promote the interests of major corporations around the world, for the United States. And therefore, they are inherently, structurally, institutionally untrustworthy. And as long as a person remains inside any of those agencies, you can't believe a word they say. And the reality is that even most of the people that come out of the CIA, you can't believe what they say. Yeah. So you just zero them out, in my opinion.
All right, I'm going to bring Mark Sims back up. And there's so many wonderful questions that have come in. And so kind of summarizing some of the major themes. So this is for you, Mark, and for Danny. People are asking, okay, well, what about citizens diplomacy? What about bypassing the government and really creating our own direct communication. So several people have asked variations of that question, and I think that's applicable for both of you. And certainly at some point, Danny, maybe you might want to talk more about what Carol Rosin and the people of Russia, not the government of Russia, the people of Russia have been doing, because that's certainly, I know, something you're very aware of and is very beautiful. But Mark, you're on board, and wherever you want to go with this next.
Okay. Well, yeah, the Citizens Diplomacy Initiative is something that's very near and dear to my heart, and I know to Danny's heart as well. It's a subject we've talked a lot about for a long time, and it's evolved over the years. Originally, this very topic came out of our discussion when I met Danny back in 2015, and he shared with me the vision that he and Dr. John Mack had developed together, establishing an organization for ultimately bringing this issue of diplomacy, citizens diplomacy, front and center. And so when Dr. John Mack tragically was killed in 2006 in an accident, Danny and his plans had to be put on the back burner for a while. So when I met him, that was 9 years later in 2015, he presented to me this idea of establishing the New Paradigm Institute with the idea of trying to engage with progressives in the theological theater, primarily academics, progressive academics in the various faiths, and engaging in them in a discussion about the theological and philosophical implications of the fact that extraterrestrials exist. And it was all in an effort to just prepare the human family for this inevitable reality, because it is very real, and it's important now. And I think one of the issues that makes it urgent in a way like never before is the fact that we have become an existential threat to ourselves. And that threat is directly related to this kind of policy of maintaining the status quo, especially with the fossil fuel industry and dirty power production, and the effects that has on the environment and polluting the environment. And one of the key messages from the ETs, from witnesses for decades, is that we have to take better care of our planet, that the way that we treat the planet is unsustainable. The way that we generate energy, both with fossil fuels and nuclear power, is dangerous and is not sustainable. And so, the problem is our government, not just the American government, but governments around the world are run by corporate interest ultimately. And those are the very corporations and interests that don't want to change things. So what we have to do is take back our power as a citizenry. We have the institutions and systems in place. If we don't let them decay further, we need to take back our power and use these systems and institutions of democracy that have been established, and use them to make contact. And obviously they have technology that might be helpful in our crisis of polluting our planet and climate change and these other things. It's pretty clear for anyone who's done any research on this area to know that technologies that have been invented and attempted to bring to market, those inventors have been either their technology has been purchased and to only never been seen again, or they've been threatened, or otherwise discouraged. And in some cases, they've been killed. And so that makes it difficult for somebody who wants to help the world through better technology and clean energy to come forward with this. When you see this, this pattern and this long trail of cautionary tale inventors who've never been able to bring to the public their inventions. So this really is at the heart of the issue of a citizens diplomacy initiative. At the Harmonic Convergence this year, which is going to be July 4th, Independence Day, to July 14th, which is Bastille Day, these are the two most important days in human history relating to sovereignty and democracy and the individual's right to have a say in public policy. It's no accident we're doing the Harmonic Convergence between these two bookends. And we're going to explore this question: how do we establish and organize a meaningful, lasting citizens diplomacy initiative? How does that happen? And I don't have all the answers. I have some ideas that I think are incredibly important. And some of these ideas aren't even my own. They were given to me by, some higher power, some dear angel of mine, anybody who knows my story. And I will give credit where credit's due. I think some of the keys to a strategic initiative to make a citizens diplomacy initiative effective. But I don't think I have all the answers to that. I think Danny has some wonderful ideas. I want to give him a moment to talk on this issue. We've been talking about this for years, and so I know some of the things he's going to say. He might have some new ideas, but we also know that there are other people in the community that have important things to share and ideas to suggest. As well as people here today who are just listening in. There may be those of you who either have been contacted or have been thinking about ways to create a meaningful citizens movement for disclosure. And so that's what this Harmonic Convergence is going to be about. 11 days dedicated and focused on how do we do this?
So I'm going to bring Danny on again. And a lot of people, of course, are asking questions that are kind of a spiritual nature, a belief system nature. And one of the things that I've kind of come to believe is that we sometimes need to differentiate between our own beautiful personal experiences, and obviously many of the people watching and that are with us today have had experiences. Some of them have had interdimensional experiences, lucid dream experiences. Some have seen amazing things. My question for the two of you is, how do you differentiate between a person's personal experience and what, let's say, takes place in group consensus reality? Because that seems to be a really important area for us to navigate. Our own personal spiritual or archetypal experience is very real and very precious, very important. And then actual events, such as probably Roswell in July of 1947, where something took place in group consensus reality. So there's a question for both Danny and Mark.
Do you want to answer,
Sure.
Danny, or?
Sure, I'll take a run at that too. I think obviously a person who has had a direct, immediate experience of a dimension of reality or an aspect of reality that she or he is convinced is true is going to govern her or his personal judgments about everything. It's going to have a major impact on their entire worldview. If something that they've seen and experienced is contrary to the consensus narrative of truth, they're going to have to shift into another perception of reality. And those individuals, of which there are a growing number, are obviously going to be participating in this particular endeavor. And a lot of their counsel is going to be very important to us, because we'll try to figure out why it is that they've been contacted, what has been their response to the contact. For example, are they continuing to have regular contact experiences with these extraterrestrial, extra-dimensional beings? This is how John Mack and I were working at it back in 1994 or 95. What we had done is we had encountered a not insignificant number of individuals who were having repeated contact experiences. And that they were very credible, highly credible witnesses, highly credible experiences that they were having. And so John hadn't quite thought about this, but it occurred to me. I said, wait a second, if we've got people who you're in direct communication with, who have regular contact experiences with beings who report to them that they're of an extraterrestrial origin, this is a great opportunity that we have here, because the fact is that many of the people still, when they first start having one of these encounter experiences, they can tell when they're getting ready to happen. They can tell that something extraordinary is happening. The hair will start standing up on their arms and stuff. They'll get this kind of feeling that they're encased in some kind of a vibrational frequency of some sort. So that they're aware of this. But the problem is that because our human species has been so used to, over the millions of years of our biological evolution, we have such a built-in system of survival that our body recoils unconsciously, reflexively, in the face of something that is completely new and completely foreign. And so what we had to do first is we were trying to help get some of these people over the immediate reaction they have every time they have one of these experiences. That is, as soon as it starts to happen, they become terrified. Their body gets frightened, and of course, when they get terrified, they get angry to try to overcome it, and they can actually become fairly dangerous. I mean, we as human beings are a pretty aggressive species. And so that there have been lots of accounts that John Mack had, that people who had these regular experiences would like throw things at the UFO people. They would hold on to furniture and make them drag them out of their room, and they would kick at them and punch them, and and these UFO people, what they would do is they would freeze them. They would say, okay, if that's what you're going to do, we're just going to zap you here. And so the people then became frozen, and that terrified them even more. I mean, it's like being locked in a coffin or something. You can't move, you can't breathe. And so the terror that the people were experiencing was compounded by the fact that they were getting frozen like this. And so John and I had a long set of conversations about this, and what we decided to do was to have a few of his regular contactees that we found to be the most credible get trained by Stanislav Grof. Through the holotropic breathing exercises, so that they could actually get centered and get really calmed down, and they could get control over their autonomic nervous system that kind of has this instinctive, unreflective reaction to something so completely alien, if you will. And so we began that program, and when we had some really good success with it at the very beginning. For example, one of the women who used to have this terrible reaction to them, she got so mellow that the next time that they appeared, as soon as the hair started standing up on her arms and the hair on the back of her neck, she started doing the holotropic breathing exercises. And so when these ETs manifested in her room, she was very calm. And they were in this kind of crouching position, getting ready to have things thrown at them, and have to zap her. And they said, oh, wow, look at this. She's really mellow. And she was very friendly and very amicable, and had conversations. And for the first time ever, they took her to see her baby that she had found herself, after one of these abduction experiences, found herself pregnant. It was totally positive. She hadn't had any kind of sexual relations with anybody, that she knew of. And she went to the doctors, and they confirmed that she was pregnant. And then 4 months into her pregnancy, she had another abduction experience, and she wasn't pregnant anymore. And so she had not failed to remember this, and it was in the back of her mind. It was part of why she was so upset with these beings, because she was sure they had done this. And so when she got trained through the holotropic breathing, and she stayed very mellow. When they appeared the next time, she began to talk with them about her child and what is happening with the child. Is it a boy or a girl? And they were actually kind of dumbfounded at her. And they, for the first time ever, they agreed to take her to see her baby. And so she told us all about the details, about how they took her up to their craft voluntarily this time. And instead of experimenting on her anymore, what they did is they had her take her clothes off and get into this pool of like gelatin-like stuff. This aqua colored gelatin stuff. And she was to submerge herself in it and breathe it in and fill her lungs up with this that were filled with oxygen, this material. And so that she just had to do it. And it protected her against the G-forces, apparently, that at least through part of the trip. And so they brought her to their planet. They took her down to meet her child, and she got to hug her child and love her child, and then they brought her back. And so it was such a positive experience that we said, wait a second, why don't we begin to have a whole program of doing this, of having people, because a lot of people will say, yeah, well, you know, I know the UFO people are right, and if they show up in my bedroom, I'm just going to go, hey, howdy, how are you? And what they do is they piss their pants instead. You know, and they go, whoa, holy mackerel.
Right.
On third thought, you know, this is kind of frightening. And so what we'd have to do is try to talk to people to get them to go through the training with Stanislav Grof. And we're going to try to recruit a whole diplomatic corps. We were going to have this little kind of secret program going on of having a diplomatic corps of these regular contactees. And then we said, look, why don't we expand this? And so we were actually in negotiations to try to figure out how to put together a new paradigm institute, which we're going to call the Worldview Institute at Harvard. And we're going to try to purchase the Litauer Center, which was the old government building between the law school and the college, and have an institute there to train people to go into a full-scale kind of diplomatic training program there. And when John was unfortunately killed. And no conspiracy involved. Got hit by a drunk taxi cab driver in England from looking the wrong way. His last words were, "Oh, so stupid! I was looking the wrong way." You know, that's what he said. And so that the bottom line is, this has been something we've been talking about for a long time, and we've had all kinds of experiences with. In the Project for Extraordinary Experience Research that he had, the peer group at Harvard, where we got to meet dozens and dozens of people who, and part of my job, just like it was later in 2001 at the Disclosure Project event we had at the National Press Club, part of my job was to vet these people, to really determine whether or not they were of such a level of credibility that even a jury would have believed them, you know, and so that was partly what I was doing. So I was helping to meet with these experiencer circles and try to figure out who the likely candidates were for this program when John was killed. So that it doesn't take much to get me started on it again. And so when Mark came to see me at our institute, you know, because he'd had this experience. And he was in the category of people who now know. It's not a question of guessing or coming up with probability projections. So he knows that this is true. And so that he had the level of confidence in what we were talking about to say, this is a great idea. What we ought to do is we ought to consider how we get started on this. So we tried to recruit some of the people in the academic community to begin with. So we set up a shop up in Berkeley, up at Holy Hill, where they have I think there were probably 30 different religious denominations have their seminaries up there in theology schools. And so we started meeting with them to try to start to get this done. And so this has been underway, and we're now talking about having a virtual institute, a new paradigm institute, that we can utilizing the technology of like a Second Life or the observation deck or those kind of things, to build a virtual institute where people can come through their little avatar and come to the meetings, sit at the round tables to discuss things with us, come to attend lectures, go to motion pictures, movies and stuff that they may not see otherwise. Given the modern technology that we now have, we can do that. And we have as a backup, some part way off in the future, we have a very gracious benefactor, Andrew Beath, who is the head of the Earthways Project, who has an entire castle up on Clear Lake, 100 miles north of San Francisco. It's a big, a 60,000 square foot Art Deco hotel with a 10,000 square foot attic in the place, on an 18.5 mile long lake. Yeah, but it's a major lift because it's got 1929 wiring, and it's got to have all of the proper entrances, everything. So what we've done is, instead of going down that road right now, we're talking about doing the virtual academy or an institute, so that we can invite people in to come to lectures, to come to conferences together, to come to we're going to get a Jordan Peace, for example, who has the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library up in Ashland, Oregon. He's got virtually every single UFO movie that has ever been made, every book that's ever been written, every lecture that's ever been attended, all the documents and stuff. He's got them there, and so that we're going to hopefully have him have a part in this, where he's going to be able to provide that digital information to everybody. So there's like a library where people can come to do their research. So this is what we're talking about now, but a very real part of this New Paradigm Institute will be training an actual professional diplomatic corps to reach out and establish direct communication with the extraterrestrial civilization through the CE5 activities, et cetera, which Mark will go into some detail on here. But most of you know about these things, the 116, 17 people that are here tonight, that know about this, and Mark will carry you along on that if you don't know about it yet. But this is the plan that we have in mind, and we have a fair reputation of being able to carry out our plans because they're realistic and they're grounded. And we are trying to engage the mainstream on what we're doing. We used to go into the courts all the time. We now are going to the court of public opinion on this through the major media, such as our meeting here tonight. And we're in the process of recruiting you, in case you didn't notice. Up to this point.
This is really powerful, everybody, because you are the ones that are most interested to sort of track what Danny and Mark are doing. Because it is time for us to create a diplomatic corps, and Mark and Danny are doing it, and how blessed we are to be on the ground floor of that. So with that, Danny, thank you. I'm going to give Mark some time. Let's all give Danny a big twinkle. Thank you, Danny, for just amazing information and very valuable. And Mark, I'm going to give you a chance to kind of share a little bit more about the Harmonic Convergence 2021. But also just a follow-up question to what we were talking about, because you did have this life-changing experience, and you went from, somebody who was, having a traditional life, if you will. You had your incredible experience. It shook you up. It was not the easiest thing in the world to integrate.
It shook me up, all right.
Yeah, and that's the thing to remember, is that when people have these big experiences, it's an existential crisis. Everything that, it changes things. And you've gone through that process and now have really dedicated your life to this mission. So share with us maybe some of the steps that you would recommend to people that are having increasing awakening, and the challenges that come with that, relatives or people who think that they're crazy or don't buy into it, and the judgment that can come with that. And then, of course, tell us more about the Harmonic Convergence and how we can all participate.
Okay. So there's three main areas in that set of questions that I'll focus on. One is my personal experience and transformation. I was an atheist back in 2012. I had been an atheist my entire adult life. I was hardcore atheist. I was a member of a national atheist organization called the Freedom from Religion Foundation, started by Dan Barker, who used to be a reverend, wonderful man, very good man, and members of that organization included Ronald Reagan's son, who's a prominent member. I'm a lifetime member. I paid my original dues back in 2008, made me a lifetime member. Never thought I would change. And then I had my experience. And the reason why it so profoundly changed my beliefs on death and the afterlife is because of this, world-changing view, this experience of having been effectively taken out of my body into somebody else's body, which I learned was a past lifetime. And I experienced that previous lifetime's death. I spent the last few minutes experiencing that lifetime right up to the time I died, which in one case I was executed, and the next time I was shot by a hunter. I was a wolf. So, through these experiences, they're pretty compelling to when somebody who's taking you through that experience is telling you that there is life after death, and there's a whole modus operandi to the way that we evolve consciously and develop spiritually to be to ultimately to go to a next major phase of our individual and collective evolution. And what I learned through that experience and over this 13-day period is the history of where we've come from together, and how that process works, the purpose for it, and where we're going, and the next major stage of our conscious evolution. And we're on the cusp of this. And so I feel a bit like a bringer of good news, because I just want to assure everyone that the contact issue, the purpose of making contact is deeply rooted and connected with our awakening, this thing that's often referred to as the spiritual awakening, or the next phase of our conscious evolution. I could go into a lot of detail. I won't here because that's not the purpose of this, but I just want to answer the main part of your question, which is, yes, indeed, I was changed almost overnight from an atheist to a believer in reincarnation, and to the idea that some part of us survives the physical death to continue its journey and development. And so that to me is exciting, especially when you understand why that works the way it does and the purpose of it. It's beautiful, and that's something I'm very passionate about sharing with the world. And I've been preparing for the last 9 years to gain the confidence and the ability, the articulation of conveying a very complex story, not just my own personal story, but the overarching story about the history of the world and our intimate relationship with what I like to refer to as our star family, because they really are family members. And you can think of them as both family members in the traditional sense, like our grandparents that have moved on. I believe that indeed these are examples of part of this phenomenon that's now referred to as the unidentified aerial phenomenon. I believe the orb phenomenon is a form of an advanced ascended being that was once human or some other type of physical being that is manifested into an orb, and that's how they get around and appear to us. And they can change into various shapes and communicate through these orbs. And then you have these family members that aren't as directly related to us, but have had a hand in our evolution and have managed our growth and development as a species and all species on this planet. And so that's a part of our story. And so that to me is very exciting, being aware of it and being able to share that with people who are interested in that topic. And when what I've learned since 2012 is you got to be careful what you share with people. You got to know your audience. You may share this kind of stuff with one group of people and they're like, eating it up and very much on the edge of their seats and excited by it. And when you tell that same story to a group of psychiatrists who are evaluating your mental health, it can have terrible consequences that I've experienced. So, know your audience. The second thing I'd like to talk about is the importance of contact. I said it before earlier that we have reached a point of our collective evolution on this planet, both intellectually and technologically, that we have become an existential threat to ourselves because we have outpaced our spiritual development. And we've become a danger to ourselves. We're like children with a loaded gun or children with an atom bomb. And that is scary because with the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction in these other countries that don't necessarily have our best interest in mind and have what I would call a dangerous worldview and perception of reality, they could harm a lot of people and the planet. And this isn't a problem that's going to go away without a concerted effort to deal with it. And I think the United States is in a unique position to set an example on policy, on international policy on weapons of mass destruction. And one of the ways that we can set an example is by doing it ourselves. We have to eliminate these weapons of mass destruction, specifically nuclear weapons. They are not a good idea. And this is something that the ETs have been telling us for decades, ever since the atom bomb showed up on the scene back in 1945. Magically, all of a sudden, there was a big increase in UFO cases and encounters with these pilots of these craft. And what they were telling witnesses, contactees, is, hey, this is dangerous stuff. You should stop. And so we need to take heed. That's been good advice. And it points to the fact that would be something that a extraterrestrial would say if they had our best interests in mind. And so this is, to me, an indication that they are worried about us. They do care about us. This question, are they malevolent? Are they benevolent? Is there both? Are there multiple factions, multiple races that are competing with one another? Some want to take advantage of us and possibly eliminate us to take over our planet, or worse. And then there's the good guys fighting for us and behind the scenes. I have my own opinion on this. I've studied it to great length, and I will eventually come out and share what I believe, but I think it's premature at this point. It will derail the discussion. The main point is, it is time for us to make contact for our own benefit, for our own health and future, and they are ready. And I believe that they're operating on the prime directive principle. That is to say that they will not impose themselves on us until we ask them and give them permission. And that permission will come in the form of a citizenry of the world reaching some kind of critical mass in numbers and collectively reaching out to them with a a message that we've all agreed on, and that we're presenting to them as a collective, as a significant percentage of the human family. And I think, you know, that we could have discussions about what is that number. I don't know what the number is, but it's probably more than 100,000. It's probably less than 1 billion. There's somewhere in that range, there's a tipping point that once met, they will have no choice. Well, they always have a choice. I would go so far to say as they would feel very comfortable that enough of us have reached out to them and in an act of friendship and bilateral, mutual, respectful contact for them to respond in some way that's very obvious to everyone that's paying attention, that they're there and willing to engage in a dialogue with us. So what we're doing at the Harmonic Convergence this year over this 11-day period between Independence Day and Bastille Day is talking about how to go about this process. What are some of the strategic initiatives that would be part of an overarching plan to make that makes sense, that might have a chance of success? And I have, I think, a few really good ideas, but I don't claim that they're the best ideas, but I want to present them to a body of people who are, like myself, very passionate on this issue, who have been involved for decades researching this, who maybe possibly been in contact and have value and information to share that could inform us on the best approach on this. And then from there, once we have all the best ideas on the table, we can kind of put together a plan and you know, chew on it and debate it and then present it and act on it ultimately. And so that's what we hope to do over this 11-day period. We want to bring to the table amazing people like Whitley Strieber, one of the most famous contactees and abductees in history, in human history. He's written prolifically about his experience. He's been across the whole spectrum from the beginning, where he was traumatized. He was just beside himself with fear at times. And now he looks back on his journey and feels he's been blessed by having been an early contactee, and now understands the bigger picture and what's about to happen. And his new book, New World, is one of the most important books I think that's ever been written on the real story behind the UFO phenomenon and the abduction phenomenon. And I cannot recommend a book more than The New World, and that's my personal favorite. There are many great books, but that's one that I highly recommend if people really want to know who they are and what their relationship is to us and why they're so interested in us and wanting to be a part of this next stage of our conscious evolution. Read that book. He has got it nailed. We've got people like Richard Dolan, an historian on this, probably one of the best that's ever been. He's going to be involved in this discussion on roundtables discussing it. He's going to be presenting on issues related to this question of establishing and organizing a citizens diplomacy initiative. We've got Ray Hernandez, who's the founder of FREE, this amazing think tank and research organization that's been interviewing and collecting data from contactees, abductees, people who've had near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, all these seemingly my dogs are in front of me playing, so that's what that noise is. Anyway, he's collected 5 years of data along with his colleagues, scientific data that they've analyzed and are now presenting for the first time in published books. And back in Laughlin just last week, he was presenting the findings of this data. Just amazing information and data that can inform us on the nature of this phenomenon and how we might approach making contact in the most effective ways. So we're going to have him. I'm hoping that Marie Rodwell will participate. Barbara Lamb, Linda Moulton Howe, I'm engaging with her. I think she's on the edge of joining this 11-day event and participating. We've got Don Schmidt, the foremost expert on Roswell, July 8th, which is 4 days into the harmonic convergence. We have the anniversary of Roswell from 1947. He is going to be presenting on Roswell. We're going to have Harry Drew, who's an anthropologist and archaeologist who studied the Kingman UFO crash and recently published a book, very well researched. He's going to be presenting. We're going to have, hopefully, I'm waiting for a confirmation from Dr. Lynn Katai, who's the foremost expert on the Phoenix Lights incident in Phoenix, Arizona. She's done a movie on that topic that's been seen by millions of people. We've got Grant Cameron, Victor Vigiani, who's one of the co-founders of the International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research. Their mission statement is to establish diplomatic relations with extraterrestrial intelligence. They're an international organization based out of London. We are collaborating with them, joining forces with them and other organizations around the world. So this isn't just me and Danny. There are others that are like-minded citizens of our international community who feel that it's imperative and that we have an obligation and a responsibility to reach out as citizens and bypass our governments because they've dropped the ball. They no longer have any credibility. We can't necessarily trust them anymore, at least a significant portion. We need to engage them directly, and they will engage us directly, both individually and collectively. I'm absolutely convinced of it. I've done it many times. Just last weekend at Disclosure Fest in Chatsworth, north of Los Angeles, I led a CE5 meditation with 50 people. We had multiple ships arrive. We videotaped them. We asked them before 11 p.m. arrived, we asked them to show themselves in a special way at 11:11, and right on cue at 11:11, a bright ship passed right overhead. We filmed it. We got like 3 different cell phone camera angles on this ship. And then right above us, it dimmed down and disappeared. And it was not a satellite. It was not an airplane. It was way too bright. It was caught on iPhones without any night vision assist. And you can very clearly see the moon and this right next to the moon, this ship going right past it. And you can't, you're not going to be able to film a satellite with an iPhone at night. You're just not going to be able to get the lighting. And you can see some of the brightest stars in the skies just barely visible with this bright dot in the middle of this. So, I've done hundreds of CE5 meditations. It's just anybody who wants to have a first contact experience of that nature, just do a CE5. But we can come together and do this en masse and have amazing results from this. And I believe that can gain the kind of momentum that would be necessary to gain the attention of the world. And that's what I hope to do.
Wow, it's beautiful, beautiful. I'm going to bring Danny back on because there's, again, so many questions that people have. And I'm going to actually read a quote from John, who I think is beautiful. John Carter in our chat box writes, there are 3 actors in this scenario. The humans who have no idea what reality is. The NDE people, or I'm going to add people who have had multidimensional experiences and know that there is no death of the I am. And then and the messages that we get from the other side. And then the ETs who are waiting on the other side or on the sidelines, eager to see us evolve. So with that as a thought, and a beautiful thought, I'd love to hear what Danny and Mark, how you feel, because again, John's kind of summed up a lot of the comments and questions coming in about people's spiritual perspective or belief system perspective about all of this.
Well, people have heard me talk in the past about the spectrum of human worldviews that are presently operative on our planet right now. In the more mundane aspect of each of these worldviews, we see our community, when confronted with a major public policy set of decisions to make, that we tend to divide ourselves into these factions that have been identified by sociologists. And the political manifestation of these different worldviews is authoritarian at the extreme right end of the spectrum. And as you work your way from the right to the left, they're authoritarian, then reactionary, conservative, moderate, liberal, progressive, and utopian. These are the kind of operative worldviews that people function under here on our planet. And it's clear to me that there is an entirely new worldview that has to be developed here. Because I mentioned it in passing, that all of these major operative worldviews of our human family at the present time are all rooted in the fundamental common premise that we are the most highly evolved sentient intelligence in the entire universe, and that somehow the universe exists solely as a stage on which to play out the drama of our evolution from the kind of a single-celled, a primitive life form in the primordial slime of millions of years ago, billions of years ago, up into a star-faring species that will go out and populate the universe. This is a myopic perception of our place in the universe, and I think we're getting ready to be shown that. And so that what we have to do is we have to work from the ground up to prepare ourselves to prepare an alternative worldview that can actually place us in a position of value in a much larger and more complex universe, even a multi-dimensional universe, as you touched upon, in order to understand our place without becoming completely confused and uncentered. So that's a process that really has to be undertaken right now, and there are a number of different players. So each of the adherents to these particular worldviews are all, in a certain sense, a collective player in this drama. The extraterrestrial civilization, we need to really ascertain what the demographics are of this extraterrestrial civilization. Is it a unified civilization? Has it evolved to the point of having a coordinated, systematic decision-making process? Are there still factions that are functioning within the extraterrestrial civilization that we'd have to be cognizant of? These are all things that are in the normal diplomatic world, elements of how you have to deal with this. You have to deal with your own domestic people as a diplomatic force, in the factions that are inside your own nation state to take into account. And then you have to deal with the other nation states and how they relate to each other. These are all skill sets that have been developed by our human family, and there are whole courses involved in having to train yourself to be able to be. You can't just shoot from the hip, or play by the seat of your pants in these things, or just open yourself up completely unconditioned to every single experience that you have here. There's a kind of a reflective activity that we have to engage in here collectively together. So we need to, what we're proposing at the New Paradigm Institute is to assist in displaying out in front of us what all the issues are here, to get a clear kind of approach to how we are going to do this collectively. The fact that we've made this decision that we're not going to be depending upon the governmental structures that have been developed on our planet, because they've brought us to this point where we live daily, hour by hour, under the threat of total nuclear annihilation, all in support of some major corporate elite that are trying to exploit the natural resources, of the planet for their own private benefit, and then the reaction that different nation states have to that process that's going on, some of them more threatening than others. But we have to take what we can from the knowledge of our human family over the millennia, to bring it to bear in an institute where we can lay it out on the table, evaluate it, try to understand our different religious traditions, our different metaphysical dimensions of reality that we've come to understand, and really develop a whole new worldview. Because in order to really have an open, ongoing diplomatic relationship with members of the extraterrestrial civilization, we have to merit that. We can't just insist that they deal with us as equals. We can't force ourselves upon them. We certainly can't arm ourselves collectively and try to go out and vanquish them in any way at all. But there will be elements inside our human family who actually propose that. These are the authoritarian first paradigm worldview people that see the world that way and see reality that way. So we have to have a two-front diplomatic undertaking here. One is with the extraterrestrial people, and the other one is with our own citizens. We have to have a diplomatic relationship with all of these different governing structures on the planet, the corporate structures, the business structures, the religious institutions, et cetera. This is a very complex process that we have to engage in, but we can't be intimidated by that. We have to figure out collectively how to do this. Every one of us has to bring to the table whatever abilities we have, whatever knowledge we have, whatever education we have, whatever personal experiences we have, and to share them so that we can come to a collective decision about what kind of a position to present to the extraterrestrial beings. And we need to do this in our own lifetimes, because the reality is that this event is taking place now. And for us to be prepared to participate in this in an effective way, we need to do this now. We can't keep putting it off. We can't keep waiting for the government to tell us. We can't keep waiting for our religious institutions to come to some institutional decision on this. And so we have to do this ourselves. And we have to demonstrate to the extraterrestrial beings and to the various institutions of our planet that we as a citizenry are capable of making decisions ourselves. And that's what we have to do. So that's how what I think has to take place, and we have to start doing it right away.
Beautifully stated. Mark, I'm going to put the spotlight on you for a moment. What would you like to add? And people are asking how they're going to be able to interact with you and become part of this. In addition to just watching other speakers during the harmonic convergence, how are people going to be able to actually interact and be more involved?
Well, so that's a really good question. And I think right now people can interact with me this way by coming to events that I organize, and I am trying to make myself as available as possible. But the reality is, over time, it's going to be more and more difficult for people to gain access, because I think this is going to get big. And what I mean by that is more and more people are going to become engaged and want to be involved. And it's harder and harder when that happens to do one-on-one interactions. So I'm thinking about these problems. This is part of the work I've been doing over the last 9 years, is how do you engage the entire human family potentially on this issue, and educate them and bring them up to speed, because as Danny so correctly stated, it's not just about the ETs. We have a responsibility to prepare ourselves and recognize that we have work to do, and not all of us are as ready as we think we are. And in fact, there's people who have no clue about what's about to happen in the next 5 years. And what about them? How do we prepare them? So I've been thinking holistically and strategically about what I would term demographics. I've tried to analyze, the human population into groups, kind of like you would organize your curriculum based on the intellectual level of the student, and then create custom material that's geared for that grade level. To use a good analogy, approach this as different grades. You got people who get it, who are ready for contact. There's a few of those people I've met. And then you have people who are right on the cusp that just need a little bit more preparation and support. And then you've got people on the other end of the spectrum who haven't a clue. And how do we help them along? Because for those people, the consequence of contact on a mass level, on a global level, could traumatize them. And we need to think about that. I feel a personal responsibility for their well-being and to do as much as possible to grease the skids for them so that they're not completely in shock. And I understand that, there's no silver bullet or no magic solution to this, that there are going to be, some casualties of, through contact, people whose entire belief systems are going to be shattered, and they're not going to know what to do, and they're going to freak out, and they're going to, claim it's the devil. This is, the devil's work, and so, that's going to be part of this process, and we got to be prepared for that. But I think we can mitigate that if we think strategically. So one of the areas that I've been thinking very seriously about for the past few years is creating a virtual school or a virtual place where people can engage in discussions around this issue at their level of comfort and level of intellect, and help them along as quickly as possible in preparation for this inevitable contact event. And that platform needs to be easy to access. It needs to be multilingual. It needs to be immersive. It needs to be interactive and collaborative. And so luckily my background is in computer graphics. I mean, this is my formal training. My first career was as a computer developer, computer graphics software developer. And so I know all about how to create virtual spaces on the internet that allow for collaborative learning and creative ways to do that. In fun ways. I think that, the way to make this attractive to people is to make it fun. And that's one of the things that makes me really excited about this, because it's going to be really fun. The observation deck is a virtual world created by Captain Ron and Lori and her husband, Michael Moretti. And they have, and Jordan Peace also has been involved in that. And they have created a space, a virtual world platform for hosting events centered on the UFO phenomenon, although they're thinking about branching it out to more markets that could use the space, because it doesn't have to be just for UFO people and conferences. But the idea is there for a model in which people can congregate when they have the time to do so and learn. And we could have so what I've been talking to Danny about is creating a virtual New Paradigm Institute, a school without walls, where people can come and get trained and learn about these issues. They can be trained by a teacher who, there's plenty of great people out there with wisdom and information to share on this issue that can teach. Danny is one of them. I know this is his passion, this issue of contact and how to teach people the history about this and all the aspects of it. But Danny, as busy as he is, he's also spread too thin. There's only so much he can do. So the other strategic element of a virtual school without walls is having virtual teachers, virtual people that are controlled by AI, that are trained to teach a curriculum on various topics, so that you can have the benefit of a one-on-one training session with somebody like Danny, or somebody like JJ and Desiree Hurtak, or somebody like Whitley Strieber, who can share tremendous information on this topic and help bring people up to speed and explain what this is about. But it's all done through AI, that you have these 3D avatars that look just like Danny or look just like JJ Hurtak and Desiree Hurtak. You can go knock on their door in the virtual world where they have a permanent residence and talk to them. And it's all AI. And not only can you talk to them, you can talk to them in your native language. So somebody in Thailand can talk to them just as well as somebody in France can talk in their native language. And so we have that technology now, and it's time to bring it to bear on this this issue, this need that is so desperately required at this point in time. And so I've been working on this. I'm very serious about it, and I'm hoping that by this time next year, we'll be hosting the harmonic convergence on this platform. Right now, this year, we're doing it on the observation deck, which is tremendous. My hat's off to Captain Ron and the others. It's just wonderful what they've done, and I want them to be part of the new thing. They're simply licensing this virtual technology from another company. And I'm hoping that I can engage and encourage them and convince them of moving when we're ready, when it's ready for prime time, to take the observation deck, and it'll be a permanent part of this virtual campus that we're going to create. So you can have conferences run there, and they can manage that like they do as their business now, and that will be their thing. And we'll have the Romero Institute, where Danny and his team there, and Sarah Nelson, his lovely wife, and Patty, his brother, and his family, other members of his family, the Lakota Law Project. We're going to have the virtual Lakota Law Project with Chief Iron Eyes, a little avatar of Chief Iron Eyes that's AI controlled. But Chief Iron Eyes could send something out on social media that says, hey, I'm going to have a presentation. It's going to be me up on stage giving this presentation, and I'll answer your questions. It's not going to be my avatar and my AI avatar. So this is the future. This is really the future. And what I love about this is that we're leveraging the use of advanced technologies for the purpose of good, of helping our human family in the right ways to help raise our consciousness intellectually, scientifically, and spiritually, and because that's really what we need. We need this desperately right now, and so I'm excited about it. That's the long-term plan, and I think we can do it within a year. That's my goal.
Well, we're getting a lot of very excited responses in the chat box, and I want to show some of these web pages that Mark's been talking about. First of all, let's all make sure that we go to, this is where you can register for the harmonic Convergence 2021. It's by going to the observationdk.com. Excuse me, the observationdk.com, and then you'll easily be able to find the Harmonic Convergence 2021. And that's where you're going to see all the different things that he's lined up. You know, Carolyn Cory, I noticed she was in our audience today. Ellen Steinfeld's been in the audience with Desiree and JJ Hurtak. They're traveling, doing promotional stuff. So amazing group of people. Victor was in the audience with us today. So it's really something that's coming together. And of course, we at Saturday Night Live will be supporting it in all the ways that we possibly can. So I also want to take people to a couple of other important websites that Mark mentioned. And this first one, or the next one I'm going to take you to, is the Romero Institute. And, you know, we talked earlier about how much Danny does to serve our world. And I really want to encourage people to go visit the Romero Institute and make a donation. Take a look at what they do. The Lakota People's Law Project is so important. And again, thank you, Danny, for all that you did to support the protests and the success of Standing Rock. Really happy to see that more and more of these big pipeline projects are being stopped. But it takes a lot of effort, and it takes people that go out and protest, and it takes people like Danny who are doing it on the legal side. So let's really please go to the RomeroInstitute.org. And Danny, I'm going to bring you on for a moment. Is there anything you'd like to especially highlight that you want people to be aware of as they go to the Romero Institute, or also your other website that we've got here, which is, of course, the New Paradigm Institute, and I'll pull that up for a moment. What would you like to say about this?
Well, I think what's important, Scott, is to point out that, for example, we at the Romero Institute are in the process of drafting the Green New Deal legislation for the state of California, and are going to be fielding a major team of organizers and public education people all across the state to support building the grassroots support for this Green New Deal. That Mark had given us a really generous contribution years ago to help put together the core staff on this, and we've been quite successful. We've drafted a 350-page rough draft of this statute. We have a 50-page executive summary of it. We just got requests. We get requests from people around the state to participate in this as volunteers. We just sent a whole major packet of this stuff at the request of Jane Fonda to give it to her today. Dolores Huerta, who is a very well-known Hispanic organizer, union organizer of the farm workers, is working. We're all working together on this with major environmental groups around the state to get Governor Newsom to declare a state of climate emergency in the state of California that will empower him under a particular statute that's been passed by the legislature to cut through a lot of the red tape and to allow an omnibus statute to be passed that deals with all the various aspects of the global climate change needs here in the state. So it's a very major project of ours, you know, equal to the Lakota People's Law Project that we've been working at for 15 years. We have an office, as you mentioned, up in Rapid City, South Dakota, where we're working with all of the major tribal people, working at trying to establish a reassertion of sovereignty on the part of the indigenous people to keep major pipelines and gas drilling and everything from going on inside the Great Sioux Nation. So that this integrated project that we have interestingly links into the whole issue of the UFO issue, because one of the two major issues that is constantly raised by the contactees with extraterrestrial people from these UFO craft is not only the issue of nuclear weapons and nuclear power. As you know, we earlier stopped the construction of all nuclear power plants in the entire United States from doing the Karen Silkwood case that knocked off and got declared unconstitutional the financial cap that the Congress tried to impose on legal liability for these major dangerous nuclear power plants. And so since that victory in the Karen-Silkwood case, not one single new private nuclear power plant has been built in the United States. And so that we are trying to carry out the agenda. A lot of the stuff that the people from the UFO craft have been saying, look, not only do you have to stop nuclear weapons and private nuclear power plants that are threatening to contaminate the planet, but you've got to stop other pollution of the planet. These fossil fuels of the oil and the natural gas that are generating carbon into the atmosphere is going to destroy your climactic system, and you're going to destroy the entire climate system of the planet. And these are this constant messaging of stopping nuclear weapons and nuclear power and stopping the pollution of your planet that's going to ruin your climate system. This has been a message that has been consistently repeated ever since the 1940s. Of being shared with our people. We need to take up the challenge. And one of the things that at the New Paradigm Institute that we're going to be working on is formulating ways for our people who are becoming trained as diplomats in relationship to the extraterrestrial civilization to, again, work back into our own planet, to not only educate our people to prepare ourselves for the membership in the Galactic Federation, but also to take care of our own planet. And to, as Mark was pointing out, rid our planet of nuclear weapons and the nuclear power plants that are threatening our environment. But we've got to stop the global climate change. And that's another one of the major projects we're doing at the Romero Institute on the grassroots organizing level and in the legislative level. But we have to recruit people who are interested in the extraterrestrial issue to understand what the messages are that are being communicated by these beings to us, so that they can understand the importance of this for our whole planet. So the Romero Institute is working in partnership with the New Paradigm Institute that we're going to be putting up as a major new project. So this is a thing with the Lakota People's Law Project, the Greening California project that we're working on, and the New Paradigm Institute. These are all major projects that we're going to try to get people to pay attention to and come work with us all to get this done.
All right, so you can go to newparadigminstitute.org. Really want to encourage everybody to go to newparadigminstitute.org.
And the Greening California .org for the work that we're doing on the global climate change front.
Okay. And somebody asked, and this is hopefully a fairly quick question, how can we help stop the new nuclear plant that's being developed in Wyoming? Is that anything that you know about?
Well, we'll get on this. Don't worry. The fact is that they can't build these plants. They can't get any contracts to really build these plants. They can talk about it and they can plan it, but they can't get any insurance because they have no limitation on their degree of liability. And no intelligent business person is going to build a facility like that where they can't secure any insurance for it. So we'll stop this one just like we stopped the Keystone XL pipeline. These are things that citizens need to organize to stop these things from happening because the government institutions have been captured by the corporations that have a financial interest in doing these things and laying waste to the environment. So that we need to organize people power, citizen power, to stop the construction of these nuclear power plants, to stop the intrusion of these oil pipelines and gas pipelines into indigenous territory, and to stop the nuclear weapons on our planet. All of these things are part of our agenda, which is the agenda of any sentient species that wants to become respected as a part of the international and global and now interstellar civilization. We've got to do this now.
I really want to thank you, Danny. And again, a lot of people are bringing it up. So just know that what I'm hearing Danny say is that yes, there may be talk of building nuclear power plants, but it can't happen.
And we'll stop it. We'll get these stopped.
Yep. So I'm going to bring Mark on for his final thoughts. And boy, this 2 hours went by very fast. I want to acknowledge there's a lot of questions people had that we didn't get to. hopefully we can create sometime during the harmonic convergence, maybe through some of our shows to answer more of these questions.
Yeah.
But Mark, what are some of your final thoughts?
Well, on that point that you just made, one of the things I plan on doing is making myself available in the observation deck on a daily basis. So we are putting together our programming for the 11 days, and I'm reserving a few hours every day where I'm available in the auditorium to answer questions. I'll be presenting on some things, but it's going to be very, informal. And I'll tell my story, probably tell it a few times because I know some people won't be able to be there the first time. But I have some things that I that I am ready to share. And so for those of you that are coming to the harmonic convergence, I just want to encourage you to take advantage of the times that I will set aside for one-on-one. Well, when I say one-on-one, I'll make myself available in an intimate setting and answer questions about my experience, anything. I've got a unique history and professional background that I don't talk to or talk about a whole lot, that I enjoy talking about, things like nanotechnology. I created a program back in 2004 to 2009 called Nano Engineer One that was leading edge software. And we did amazing things. I've got illustrations of things that we designed, that I designed, that other members of the team that were working at NanoRex designed, that I think are relevant to this question of where the technology's role, both in helping our planet move forward and our species move forward, and potentially how it could be misused, and how ethics and technology, we as a citizenry need to be educated on some of these new technologies, artificial intelligence, nanotech, others, but I especially like to talk about nanotech. And one of the reasons I think it's related to this as well is because this is the technology that the extraterrestrials are using for various purposes. This is how they are able to, appear to manifest stuff out of thin air. So I can talk about theories on which nanomachines could create macro scale objects seemingly out of thin air, but in reality, that's not the case. So I encourage everyone to check out the link to the harmonic convergence and to get tickets. I am going to, what was I going to say about that? The website there is still kind of under development, but I think by tomorrow we'll have that go live and it'll have its own URL. But for now, it's the one that's in the chat.
Great, and we will send out the recording of tonight's show, and we'll include the links so you can have the links to Harmonic Convergence and also Danny's Institute organizations. And of course, I want to remind everybody to please tune in to Saturday Night Alive for the Global Peace Tribe this Saturday night, all about building a harmonious future with Indigenous and spiritual wisdom. And we've got a great lineup. We've got Gary Zukoff. This is the first time Gary's going to be on our show. Chief Bill Lane Jr., Andrew Harvey, and amazing music. Jaya Lakshmi Ananda, Rocky Dawani, Joanne Shenandoah, and our favorite magician, Heather Rogers. So it's going to be a really, really fun show. Join us this Saturday night. And of course, Saturday Night Alive for the Global Peace Tribe happens because of Deborah Justi, who is my producing partner and co-host. Deborah, another wonderful event tonight.
Totally. this is a long time coming. I know a lot of us have been aware of this for a long time, but it's so exciting to see this happening now. And we know this is just the beginning. And what's really wonderful is all of us connecting online and really affirming what we want to move forward and create. So thank you so much to Danny and Mark for your undivided devotion. You guys rock on all levels, and let's just all give them so much love, so much appreciation, because they work tirelessly nonstop to this. And please ping them some, Danny especially, some green love to his organization to support what he's doing, because he's there with all his being moving forward. So again, sending you so much love from all of us, these hundreds of people that are on this list now on this show and who will watch the replays, just to go forward, and bless you for your work. And we have so much support for you. So much love.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, you guys. Okay, I'll see you soon. We'll get back to work now.
All right.
Back to work.
Terrific. Okay, gang. Terrific. Good
Thank
night,
you everybody
everybody.
for watching.
Love you guys. Love
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
I love you.
All
Good
right,
night.
take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.